help us get a bunch of people together and write a letter that says we can blame it on the Russians. And what does the former CIA Deputy Director Michael Morell do? He says, yeah. And when the Intelligence Committee recently asked him why he did that, his answer was, because I wanted to help Biden win the election. So what you have here is clear lying, collusion amongst Marxists in our government to stop the American people from knowing something very, very important, that the soon-to-be president of the United States was in bed with not only the Ukrainians and at a corrupt level, but with the Chinese Communist Party. And they knew that. And so they purposely lied about it, and they drafted this letter to convince people that it was a lie. And the mainstream media gobbled it up. I mean, they discredited the New York Times. They called it fear-mongering. I will point out later about how the media reacted, but still to this day, if you Google it, you'll find false information about this story. So what does this all mean? What's the translation? Well, the Biden campaign wrote a letter to cover up, also known as lying, the fact that Hunter Biden is committing financial crimes, those of which his father, Joe Biden, is deeply involved in, and that the Bidens are deeply corrupt and in bed with China and Ukraine. And then they went to their crony Marxist friends in the intelligence community and they asked them to sign this letter. I'll explain why that's important in a minute. Stating that the entire story was Russian disinformation. Like they don't have any other excuses anymore. Now, why is it important that they went to the intelligence community? Because these are people that we're supposed to trust. If you want to know something about Russian espionage activity, who would you want verifying that information? Probably people in the CIA or the NSA or any one of the many agencies now within the IC umbrella. So they colluded. They lied to the American people during an election. By the way, let me just point out, these are the same Democrats which recently prosecuted an American man for a meme about Hillary Clinton, which they deemed to mislead people about her campaign. Okay, so let's look at this now. What was the laptop info that they all had to lie and cover up? I don't know how many people out there are aware of this. So in summary, Joe Biden was working with the Ukrainian energy executives as Hunter was acting as a middleman to keep it secret from Americans, therefore allowing foreign entities to influence American policies abroad. Here's some recent investigative reported data from a BBC article. I'm going to start with China and then go into Ukraine. All right. So concerning China, this is from the laptop. Remember the one that everybody lied about and now has been proven to be true. And now they're all panicking about it. 1, the laptop contained an email from Hunter Biden in August 2017, indicating he was receiving $10 million a year from a Chinese billionaire for, quote, introductions alone. Now, let me just pause here. Do you think that anyone gives you $10 million alone without expecting anything in return?
I don't think so.
Do you think that this billionaire, by the way, we're talking about communist China. This isn't a free market. It's not America. This is communist China, the government that assigns social numbers to their citizens and monitors 100% of their life. They own everything and everyone. So when you say a Chinese billionaire or any big firm in China, you might as well just say the Chinese Communist Party. $10 million. You think it was an accident that they were paying the soon-to-be president's son $10 million for access to his daddy? And if you're listening out there and you're in the intel community still, you know darn well what this is. This is spy work 101. They worked a source, they cold approached, or who knows how they originally got in bed with this guy. They're paying him money. We put a lot of people in jail for doing stuff like this. I digress. 10 million from a Chinese billionaire for introductions. The laptop is now revealed. 2, another email from Hunter involving China's largest private energy firm. It is said to include a cryptic mention of the 10 held by H Hunter for the big guy, which we may have heard about on the news previously. Fox News said they have a source verifying the big guy in the purported email was a reference to Joe Biden, as we all know. In addition, now a former business associate of Hunter Biden has come forward to say he can confirm the allegations, reference the business with the energy firm, and that the big guy was in fact Joe Biden. Okay, so you have two instances, two different entities, but it gets worse. When Biden was in office, because some people would say, oh, well, that was before he was the president. When Biden was in office, Hunter, for no apparent reason involving U.S. interest, gets on Air Force Two with his daddy, the vice president under Obama, and flies to Beijing for an official state visit. This is cracked out hooker in the hotel Hunter, okay, who is flying on Air Force Two to Beijing. And he's there and he meets with a Chinese investment banker named Jonathan Lee. Remember that name. The New Yorker, when he comes back, asks Hunter, what was your meeting about with Mr. Lee? Hunter says, oh, we're just meeting for coffee. We're just friends. Come on, guys. 12 days after that meeting, 12 days after he met for coffee, maybe some ice cream, the Chinese Communist Party government approved a private equity fund, BHR Partners. An equity fund is a pooled fund where advisors can make investments on behalf of the investors, ideally for large financial gains. Okay. When BHR, approved by the Communist Party, was formed, guess who's involved? The CEO is none other than Mr. Jonathan Lee. And guess who's a board member with a 10% stake in the company? Yours truly, Hunter Biden. BHR is backed, by the way, by some of China's largest state banks and Chinese local governments. So, and I'm only saying that to prove to you here that this is clearly a Chinese intelligence operation, right? Swalwell slept with a Chinese spy. Was it Pelosi's driver was a Chinese spy? Like, when were Americans going to wake up and realize that we have global opponents? There are other countries that don't eat rainbows for breakfast. I know that's hard for the Democrats to understand, but they are in opposition to U.S. interest around the world. And nothing benefits them more than for their intelligence agencies to gain access and placement inside U.S. foreign policy groups. What greater achievement for an intelligence officer than to get the president's son? And it's a long game. They've been working Hunter for a long time, right? Now that's China, and I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more about that. But let's take a look at what was on the laptop concerning Ukraine. Hunter was a board member. Again, cracked out Hunter is on these boards, right? Without any qualifications other than placement and access. Let's just pause and say, all of us know it goes without saying. Many board positions are given for their influence, right? Retired U.S. military generals will get placed on the board of a company who's looking to get defense contracts. Why? Because obviously those relationships are valuable. They're useful, right? Why would the cracked out Hunter Biden get a placement on a board in China or Ukraine? Probably because his dad's the president of the United States. Now, to be fair, this happened before he was the president, but the Bidens have been deep in politics for many, many years. Placement and access, guys. It's an intel op. So he was a board member for Burisma, a Ukrainian energy firm, while his father was the point man on U.S.-Ukrainian relations. Bet you a lot of people didn't know that. Emails show that an advisor to Burisma, the Ukrainian company, energy company, a man named Vadim Pozarsky, thanked Hunter for bringing him to D.C. to meet his dad, Joe Biden. This is on the laptop as well. By the way, when they questioned Biden about this meeting and his staff and why it did not appear on his official schedule, the Biden campaign said, we acknowledge, I'm going to read this quote, we acknowledge that Mr. Biden could have had an informal interaction with the Burisma advisor that did not appear on his official schedule, though it said any such encounter would have been cursory, aka, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Look the other way, everybody. We're doing business with the communists. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Also on the laptop, too. In 2016, Joe Biden called for the dismissal of Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin. Some of you will remember that, right? Because he got on the phone and he goes, I'm not going to give you $1 billion unless you fire this guy. Viktor Shokin was a Ukrainian prosecutor whose office was investigating Burisma, where Hunter worked, and a bunch of other companies under investigation. Biden said he would withhold $1 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars unless they fired Shokin, who was investigating political corruption in the country, including that which his own son Hunter was involved in. All right, this is a lot of information here, okay? But why does it matter? And then I'm going to open it up. Jeff, I'm sure you have something to say. Because this matters because it prevented American citizens from making a fully informed decision about the 2020 presidential election, about a potential president who was and most likely still is deeply tied to the Chinese Communist Party, Ukraine, and deeply involved in using his political positions to commit criminal activity. They are dirtbags. And everyone knows it. Everyone in D.C. knows it. Everyone in the swamp knows it. And what does the U.S. media have to say about this? Basically nothing. They immediately tried to snuff the story out, right? Because they're all commies. They're like the VP from Budweiser. Their woke agenda is to spread equity and lies and communism to the world. So they don't see things for truth. They don't accurately report things. They're not real journalists. They're propaganda chiefs for the party. Just this month, after all of this came to light, and we know the truth now about the laptop and their involvement, all this stuff. We know they lied. We know the letter was drummed up by Biden. We know Hunter is committing criminal activity. All of this. And deep down in this Time article dated April 18th, that's 3 days ago, this is what Time magazine said. Some former U.S. intelligence officials, while out of the government, so, it's all good, they wrote an open letter weeks before the election saying that published information allegedly, it's not allegedly anymore, from Hunter Biden's laptops bore the classic earmarks of Russian information campaign. They're still repeating the lie. Even though we know it's not true, Time is still telling people they're lying to people. And then at the very end, right, they begrudgingly have to squeak this out. They said, some of the data and emails attributed to the laptop have since been authenticated. Oh, I bet you that hurt them to write that line. And they follow it by saying authenticated by CBS News, The Washington Post, and The New York Times, and Fox News, and the entire world, and the intelligence community. That's hidden in the article, by the way. And lastly, before I break off, the number one result in Google, if you Google, what did Biden tell the Ukrainian prosecutor on this particular topic? You know what the number one thing that pops up on the website is, or on your search page? Factcheck.org hit piece on Donald Trump from the year 2020. Like, they don't have enough information to update it now. It's an article full of all the lies, which the entire world knows now to be lies, still writing the top of the Google search page. We are at war. I'm telling you right now. It's not kinetic. And for my civilian friends, I mean, this is an ideological and a psychological war right now. It's what we call a Cold War. Our enemies of the United States, have fully infiltrated and taken over the Democrat Party. Or you could say the Democrats fully adopted our enemies' ideology willingly. And it's not just politicians. It's the media. It's tech companies, as we've seen. Twitter files, we could do a whole episode on alone. It's academia, it's education. They are working double time. While we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine and the president's son is doing shady deals worth millions of dollars with communists in China, what does the government want you to focus on? Tranny strip shows for elementary school children. And the church still sleeps.